This next question comes from Cham, and he asks, talking God might not be understood by non-Christians, especially in the marketplace. So how do you explain suffering and God's goodness and love during this suffering period?
The first thing I'd say, first of all, I really want to affirm the question, because it means, Sham, that you are the kind of person who is engaging with non-Christians, that you are wanting to share the truth about what you have found and the reality of who Jesus is in your life. I just really want to encourage that and affirm you in that. I think there are two planks to the answer, and it's really up to each of us to pray through them and to look for opportunities to actualize these two things in our workplaces. The first is to remember that it all depends on relationship. And so what I encourage you to do is to continue to build authentic friendships of trust in your workplace. And don't build them, if you're a Christian, don't build them in order to evangelize your colleagues, right? Don't make friends with non-Christians in order to make them Christian, okay? You just turn them into a project, and people see that coming a mile away. And that actually is not quite what the Bible says. The Bible says, go out there and love people and build authentic relationships of trust with them just for the sake of it, just as an end in itself. We're just called to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, as an end in itself. So that is one separate, wholly contained biblical call for all Christians. There's a second one that says, and share me with them. Share the love of Jesus with them. Share the message of Jesus with them. So they're actually separate conceptually, even though they work together relationally. So the first thing I encourage and advise you to do is continue to invest in those relationships. This message of Jesus Christ is a big deal. It's so important, and it speaks to fractures on the human heart that sometimes can cut really deep. So it's a 10-ton gospel that we're talking about. If you try and carry that 10-ton gospel across a 5-ton bridge, it could be difficult. So build that bridge up, strengthen the bridges of your friendships, so that when you do get the opportunity to share him, to share your faith, to share what he's done in your life, the bridge is already strong. Now, quick sidebar, I'm not saying that you shouldn't just meet people randomly and share Jesus with them. You should always be willing to do that, whether it's on a train, on a bus, in an elevator, that's fine. But this question was specifically about colleagues at work. So you got to invest, it's got to take time. Good relational evangelism can take between 5 and 50 years. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for that, because good friendships do last for between 5 and 50 years. So take your time, do it relationally. The actual substance of the answer to the question of suffering in particular is because the world's broken and we are broken. That's the reason. And Christianity is the only worldview in town. It's the only worldview in the marketplace of ideas that acknowledges those two things, that the world is broken and we are broken. So I would pitch two aspects of the Christian worldview in a substantive sense to answer the question when you have the opportunity, is to say, well, the reality of suffering actually points to Christianity as worthy of being taken seriously, because we say, the Bible says that the world is broken and human beings are broken, and we see the evidence for that. COVID is evidence for that. Murder is evidence for that. My own heart is evidence for that. But secondly, it provides the most compelling response to suffering in human history. It doesn't just diagnose it, but the cross of Jesus Christ actually brings together perfect love, perfect justice, and perfect mercy in one place in human history as a response to the reality of human suffering. And you don't see that anywhere else. There is no other worldview that offers that. So when Christians are questioned on suffering, we should be really excited, because there is no better question than to demonstrate the uniqueness of the cross and the person and the power of Jesus Christ.
Thanks so much, Max. And Sham, I know that exactly what Max is saying about loving people. One of the things that has helped me be able to bridge the gap sometimes with friends who don't really have a grid for God, don't really think it's as funny to believe in God. Perhaps they think I'm praying to an imaginary friend. It's precisely in the context that you're writing the question about, times of suffering, where my friends, or even in some cases my aunts and uncles who are complete atheists, it's in the time of suffering where a text to them saying, hey, I'm praying for you, is the only time that they actually read that text and appreciate it. Sometimes they've surprised me with a text asking for me to pray to a God they don't even believe exists. But in the time of suffering, it's actually helps them see that they're seen, and helps them know that they're heard and that they matter to you. And so I would encourage you, and this is a fresh encouragement to myself, that even if we feel like people might not get the grid that we have for God, to not hesitate to still mention him and be able to witness to the hope we find in our suffering in God. And it calls for vulnerability. And like Max said, we so appreciate the heart of the question, because it shows your heart for people in suffering.